Welcome to the Anika Apple podcast. I'm glad to have you joining with me today. As we get into our episode today, it is our community week, and I'm excited to share some insights for you around what's important for us to remember as community that come directly from the week that I spent at a retreat in Costa Rica at Imiloa Institute. This Beyonding retreat was an amazing experience, and I can't wait to share some of the messages with you that I learned from observing some of our friends in the jungle. So let's get into it. From my heart to yours, I bring a message to you this week about trusting your knowing. One of the things that I've learned about gifting is that they all come with different caveats, different challenges, different things to overcome. There are parts of the ways that we operate in our lives, how we think, how we move, that we have to adjust when we are learning how to utilize, tap into, and navigate with our gifts. And what I have found is that the knowing is one of the hardest things to create comfort in. I get asked all the time, how do you trust your knowing? And what I find is that because it's not like a dream, so someone who dreams or has visions, there's something tangible. It's almost tactile, right? To have seen a dream, there's something about it that makes it feel very real to you. When you hear something audibly, similarly, it's like, I know what I heard. Even though other people might not have heard it too, there's something about hearing it and knowing that you heard it and then being able to trust in it. But when it is simply knowing, it's like, well, I know this, but how do I know it? Why do I know it? How do I know I can trust what it is that I know? And what I would say to you is that the way that you build your confidence in your intuitiveness, in your knowing, in your claircognizance, it is by building a strong relationship of trust with yourself. The relationship with the divine, with your higher power, with God, obviously, that goes without saying. That has to be there for you to really tap into your gifting. But part of the journey that you go on to trust your intuition and your knowing is trusting yourself. And how do you do that? By trusting your knowing. So it looks like you having a moment where you know something to be true and making a cognizant decision that you're going to trust yourself. Without all of the data that you typically would use to make a decision, without having something that feels like it gives you some kind of finite proof that it's going to turn out okay, it is trusting and adding a bit of faith or belief that the outcome is going to be what it needs to be, and then letting go of everything else. For many people, it's difficult. And for people who tend to be more analytical and logical, I sit in that logical space, it's often hard to let go of the what ifs around all of the other things. But here is what I would tell you from my heart to yours. We put a lot of trust and belief in things that we cannot substantiate. We even trust and believe in people who we have kind of put in places of being authorities that may not really have the depth of expertise that you believe. There is a bias that we operate in where people who sit in a place of authority, it's like, well, I go to them for this because they're an expert here and they probably know all of these things. So we tend to allow ourselves to believe that those people have as much information about whatever else we're interested in knowing, right? And to do the opposite when it comes to us, to know that we know something and then come up with a litany of reasons why we shouldn't trust ourselves because sometime once 5 years ago, we did something and we made a choice and it looks at this point like that thing was wrong. Trusting yourself is giving yourself the right amount of recognition for who you are. There is no one who knows your path better than you do. There is no one who knows what you co-created with the divine like you do. So the reality is You actually are holding this information. And as you continue to do your work to lessen the voice of your ego, to move away from pride, to move away from self-serving behaviors and searching for power and all of those in control, as you start to move away from those things, you will be able to trust your knowing more and more. So one of the things that you will absolutely want to have as you go into next year is a stronger relationship with self. And I would tell you that you're growing in your knowing, your capacity to trust your intuition is going to be strengthened by you doing that actual thing. So this is like where you're in the gym and you want to build a stronger bicep and you've got to do bicep curls. Like you actually have to exercise the muscle in order for it to grow. And this gifting that we have, our trusting, our intuitiveness, is no different. You strengthen it by trusting, by believing. You strengthen it by doing the work around it to ensure that your foundation is secure. You strengthen it by making sure that you are believing in yourself, even when it looks like it doesn't make sense. What I know is that in the next year, we are going to have a lot of moments where you have to move in a way that may not make sense to other people. And if you're looking to other people for proof or to follow in their footsteps, you may not be going in the direction that is best for you. But if you build a relationship where you know, then you'll know. And you will be able to test what you see other people doing versus your knowing. And you will be able to ground yourself in knowing that you know what you know that you know, so that you can confidently make decisions and move forward, protecting yourself from whatever challenges may be around. From my heart to yours, I hope that you will trust yourself a bit more, that you will believe that you co-created this path, this life, that you know more than you think you do, that you remember more than you even realize, and that you're worthy of trusting you. That the same trust, even blind faith that you put in other people, is something that you deserve to give to yourself. So let's get into the episode today and talk about community and Costa Rica. There's so much good here. So as we get into our community segment for the podcast today, I am so excited to share this one little tidbit of the trip to Costa Rica. And I know that I will have opportunity to share it across more of our upcoming episodes. It was so rich with so many different lessons and experiences. One of the really cool experiences that we had, we were working through a workshop, and there was a group of Capuchin monkeys that came through. These are the white-faced monkeys. And they came through in what I would call a tribe, right? That may not be what they are actually called, but I want this to resonate with you as we have this conversation around what's important for community today. So the monkeys came with their tribe, and they were swinging through and enjoying hanging from the trees and jumping from tree to tree. And there were so many poignant lessons for me in that moment as I watched them. There are 4 key things that I would highlight. One is that they moved in community, right? So none of the monkeys sitting out there were really by themselves. They were in community. They came together, they jumped from tree to tree together, and there was enough space between them for them to have their independence, but yet they could still look left or right and know that within, arm's reach, that there was a part of their tribe there. They moved in a way where there was support, where there was connection. They moved in a way where they were all going forward in the same direction, but they were traveling at different paces. They weren't all in the same tree at the same time. They didn't all jump to the next tree at the same time. They didn't stop to eat from the same space, but yet they were still in community with one another. Who are your people? Who are your people that you move with in concert, in community, that create the space for you to have your independence, that want to see you grow and flourish, and at the same time want to be a part of your migrating towards wherever it is that is the destination that you have your mindset on? Who are your people that encourage you to stay connected? Because you are going to want that sense of community as a part of the foundation for this life that you live from here on out. Community is so important. When I think about some of the earlier ways that we built community, there were multiple roles that people played. I think about the women in some of the tribes in Africa and the way that they raised children together. This concept of it takes a village is a real thing, right? And it really was their lived experience. And there was this cognizance of watching out for one another's child. There was also this cognizance of being able to cook together. One of the things I've talked about before that I love is in Cote d'Ivoire, there is an organization called CARE. And one of the programs that they help to do is create this village savings and loan. And I love that what they created was an opportunity for the women to borrow money to get ingredients to create crafts or baked goods, things that they could sell into the market. And so imagine being able to have a place within your community where you can borrow what you need to buy the ingredients to make what you're going to sell at the market, to make sure that you have the finances that you need for your family. And then you are turning that money back into the village savings and loan, ensuring that it's there for someone else. This idea of community, sharing resources and ideas, sharing expertise is going to be at the center of the way we heal what is happening in society. It will be at the center of the way that you see people flourish and grow financially in the years to come. And so the question that I posed to you before, I will say again, who is your tribe? Who are your people? Who are the people that you're creating a village around? Who are the people that you are creating this connection around? Who are the people that you know will encourage you and challenge you to continue on your path and create enough space for you to go out there and learn? At one point, we all gasped, everyone in the room, because we heard this jump and then this falling and the leaves rustling as one of the monkeys start to fall. And we were like, and of course, the monkey was fine. He landed on whatever the right next branch was and was like unfazed, right? And there's this deep trust that I observed as I watched them, which is the second lesson that I took from them. This deep trust of self. I might fall, but I'll be okay. I have to jump in order to keep on making progress. I trust myself to know my strength, to know how far I can jump. I trust myself to catch myself if I'm starting to fall. I trust myself to know that I can wander away from my tribe that I am on this journey with and still be okay. I trust myself to know. Going back to this importance of understanding our knowing. I also recognized that in this community of monkeys, there was this energy around doing what I do. And when I parallel the way that we operate in the world as humans, so much of what we do is about telling people to do what we say. As I was reflecting on this in preparation for this podcast, one of the things that kept coming up for me is the way that we have made decisions about rights, that we have created circumstances and situations for people that we would not want to go through if it were our own. I think a lot about the dynamics around a woman's body and the lawmakers and so many of people moving the agenda forward who are not women. And that is not to say that someone who's not a woman cannot think about what's in the best interest of a woman, because certainly they could be thoughtful about that. But there's a difference between what's in the best interest and what is in the agenda that we want to advance. They're not the same. And respectfully, as someone who is deeply spiritual and has a very deep relationship with God, I would tell you that I come back to the relationship with God always in remembrance that God first gives us choice, that God honors choice. And whatever it is that you choose, whatever reconciliation might be required, whatever lesson might have to come, whatever things may have to unfold as a result of your choice, God manages them, navigates them with the individual. And certainly there are lessons that are pronounced enough for other people to see and know and understand and learn from. But there is choice given to the individual nonetheless. There's something different about how we operate than how the monkeys operate. Because what I observed was them modeling the behavior that they wanted to see. So there was one young monkey with his mom. I assume it was a mom. It felt very much like a parental figure, right? And her energy was like very much like, I'm moving along on this journey. Like, you're going to be fine. And so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to eat this. And the monkey's just watching her. And then she jumped to the next tree. And I remember one of the women at the retreat saying, ma'am, your baby's over there, right? And the smaller monkey was like, but I'm good. And it went over and it found its food and it sat and ate. And when it was ready, it jumped to the next tree. There wasn't this whole dissertation about doing things in a certain way. There wasn't this whole communication. And you know they can communicate around telling what to do. It was instead modeling the confidence in self, the trust in self, the ability to judge and know where your next move can be and how to catch yourself if you're falling. All of the things that I talked about in trust were represented in the way that they operated. And so what could community look like for us if we modeled by our behavior instead of by what we said? We say a lot of things, but we don't do those things. And I'm not sitting in a place or a desire to pass judgment in this moment, but I do want to encourage you to think about the times when you've encouraged someone to do something that you know you didn't. And even if it was 20 years ago, where you were navigating a situation where a young person might be navigating it today, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want you to do that because I know that there is hurt or harm that can come from that experience. Recognize that the best advice that you can give is to model behavior that mirrors what it is that you want them to see and do. You certainly can share your experience, but talk about the learnings, talk about what and why you would do it differently. We have far too much time spent telling people what they should do, only to have things exposed where people have done exactly the opposite. And if we want to live in a world where there is truth, if we want to heal the challenges that we face the differentiation that we have between people, the space between our belief systems, we won't get there by saying, do as I say. One of the things that I think most parents would share is that there is a time where do as I say runs out, and the child needs to have some experiences to help them understand that they need to trust what it is that you're sharing. Sometimes people have to go through things, they have to experience things in order for the learning to be cemented. That is certainly not always the case, but sometimes that is what needs to happen. It's the child going up to the stove and putting their hand there and needing to get close enough to feel the warmth to know, oh, when they said don't touch that, I could burn myself. Now I understand what it means. If you want the long-lasting behavior to be present, then demonstrate it. As community, we have the ability to operate from a place of higher consciousness. We have the opportunity to operate from a place of trust and integrity, to operate from a place where we really live what it is that we say we want other people to do. Where we're not in the glass house casting stones, but instead we really are building a foundation of truth and transparency in who we are. And listen, I'm not saying that it's always going to be easy, but what I do suggest to you is there's a reason that monkeys modeled the behavior, and there's a reason there was adoption so quickly and understanding how to move from place to place. There's a reason that little small monkey was able to take this huge leap to a tree, another gasp moment, and catch himself. And there was also a moment where he lost his footing and caught himself, and his tail was attached to the branch and holding him as he quickly navigated to get back on the branch, fully supported. And I would say that if the parental figure, if the mother was sitting there telling him how to catch himself if he should fall and what to do, that all of those words might have been lost for the monkey while he was falling. But he could hold to the vision of seeing her jump. He could hold to the muscle memory of, like, I know I've seen other monkeys hanging by their tail, so I know this tail thing is an extra appendage that will help me catch myself and hold myself until I can right size myself. We have to do a better job of modeling what it is that we desire to see in the world. We have to do a better job at modeling it. That do as I do holds something really special for us in humanity. It holds a great lesson for us. And what I would say is a call to action to really reflect, what is it that you are leading with in your community? Is it really by behavior that you operate with consistently across your life? Or is it a set of behaviors that you operate with when you're in public and something different when you're at home? Or are there words that are aligned with your actions? And if any of those things are not so, it's up to you to change it. The last lesson that I observed from my friends, the monkeys, was the power of play. I think it was the most immediately pronounced lesson of seeing them as we were in our session, and there was, a moment of seriousness as people were navigating through the work that we were doing. All of a sudden, there was just noise, and there they were. And they were having a ball. And as I was in a moment of deep thinking and conversation with a dear sister, I can remember saying to myself, this is what is supposed to be in this moment, is play. I was working on some introspective work about my relationship with the work that I do. And ironically, in a session the day before, I had mentioned that one of the things I recognize about myself is that I tend to take myself very seriously. And there have been lots of messages across the year 2024 that have been encouraging me to find more time for play. This summer was one where I definitely had a lot more time of play, where I intentionally created space for play in the midst of all of the family dynamics that were going on. I recognized how important it was. And what I know to be true is that as the year went on, and as different tensions arised and things, that needed to be built and designed, that play kind of took a back burner. I think that in the second half of this year, I might have painted twice. And it's one of my favorite things to do. That is just true play, right? And so as I was watching the monkeys, I was like, oh, they came to remind us to be playful, to be lighthearted with ourselves, to enjoy life and not just allow life to pass us by. The work that we were doing in that room was about getting closer to who we are, answering some questions for ourselves that can help unlock things. But unlock for what? To build a 7, 8, 9-figure business, to create something that is legacy, to travel the world, whatever it is that people might have been working on. And I'm just using those as examples. Those were not things that people talked about in the room. But in service of what? When we work as hard as we do to create, to build, to deliver results, sometimes play gets lost. And if you really ask yourself, what is it all for? I hope that you come back to an answer that centers back on joy in your life. I do all of these things so that I can live this life that is so abundant and it's so joyful that I have time to play with my friends, with my family, with my partner, that all of that exists because that is what brings me joy. Where I think a lot of times for us, we get so caught up in the what that we forget that it's supposed to be in service of something. And that in service of something is not only about your relationship to your customer, to your product, to your services, but it also is about what it's enabling for you in your life. The monkeys came to ask us, how are we embracing play? How is play a part of our life, not just in the moments where we're celebrating a birthday or the holidays or things like that, but how can play be a part of who you are? How can you find moments throughout your day to be playful? How do you find and infuse it in relationships that tend to be more complex? I can remember a boss of mine who was very endeared to me, and he typically was a very serious person. And I can just remember, in general, people's impression of what our working relationship would be like. There was definitely this assumption that it would be really difficult for me to work with him because we were very, very different. And what's so funny is that we communicated really well, and we both had the ability to be really serious, and I got to see some of the more playful, joyful sides of him. There were moments where I can remember him walking to my office and just cracking jokes. And it was so funny because so much of that felt out of character for what I saw when we were in bigger gatherings, right? But we found ways to embrace play, to create that as a part of what our relationship was like. And in a moment where I started behaving differently, I remember that we were in a workshop, and coming out of the workshop, my understanding of the way that he communicated had been enhanced. And I was like, oh, so because he communicates in this style, he's probably looking for me to lead this way. And if I do that, this will strengthen the relationship, right? And so as a part of that shift, I became more matter of fact, more focused on, getting to the data, having the quick conversation, get in, be brilliant, get out, whatever. And he acknowledged and missed some of the connection and the playful nature that we had in our connection, and called it out, and really was like, is everything okay with you, right? Who are the people in your life that can call you on the carpet when play is missing? When you're not allowing yourself to be in the fullness of who you are? Because we, at our core, similar to the way the monkeys operate, we are also lighthearted and fun. We are meant to be that way. There's a reason that laughter does so much good for our physical bodies and our soul. We are intended to have that. And if you look at people who have this peaceful, joyful life, you can see the glimmer in their eye, the joy that dances when they ask questions, when they're deeply curious, because they have found this beautiful balance of life that includes play. Where when you look at those who you can see deep in their suffering, typically you don't see a lot of balance that includes play. So who are the people in your life, in your community, that call you back to when play is missing? One of the most salient moments for me throughout the week was this particular conversation that happened when the monkeys came. And as the monkeys were still there and we were still pausing to take pictures and video and observe them, and part of, the four key things that I shared with you today, the moving in tribe and play and doing as I do and trust, those key lessons, the person that I was working with, this dear friend of mine, said to me that it was really time for me to release the who I have been in the former part of my life. And it's so funny because in that moment, the way she said it was brilliant. And in that moment, I was sitting with like, but how do I let this version of myself go? With gratitude and love for who it has helped me to become, but also knowing that who I am being is beyond the capacity of what she had to be. That's why I am in a place of evolution. And how do I let her go? How do I let go of what the way that I have operated, particularly in my professional career? How do I release that? And the answer was there when I looked out into the jungle and the monkeys were jumping back and forth. Through play, through centering joy, through coming back to the answer to the question of why I do what I do. What is it all for? It's certainly your choice to live your life in any way that you desire, just like I talked about in the beginning of the podcast. God gives us choice. And should you choose that you want to live a life that is not full of joy and laughter and play, that certainly is your choice. But I would ask you to consider, what then is it all for? There is a quote that says something about like, I would hate to be at the end of life and to find that I have never lived. I'm not quoting it perfectly in this moment. But if you think about what it would be like to get to end of life and to realize that you never fully lived, I know that that would be a deep disappointment. And perhaps you can even think about wherever you are in this life, in this moment, that if you had twice your age today to live out in this world, what would you want these next memories to be filled with? For me, I want the next almost 50 years of my life to be marked by joy and play, to be much more lighthearted with how I carry myself, to be way more graceful and forgiving for the missteps and the choices and decisions that I would do differently had I known what I know today. to spend more time with my friends, with my tribe, to have more energy going into finding the joy and being curious and looking at learning as an opportunity to grow, as opposed to the thing that I have to do in order to deliver something that one day will be forgotten about. This life is meant to be lived, and it's meant to be lived with joy. It's meant to embrace play. And I want to encourage you today to take the lesson from these adorable creatures as they swung through the jungle, eating, traveling, operating in community, and having a good time while they did it. They still managed to get it done, to get where they needed to go, to find food along the way, to entertain us deeply, and have a good time. And I would submit to you that the opportunity to embrace more play and joy is in your day-to-day all the time. You've just to take a moment to realize that it is available to you. And I want to encourage you to do exactly that. As we close for today, I want to go back to some of the message in the opening segment from My Heart to Yours. And the Ask Anika Anything question that we are centering on today is what advice are you taking into the new year? And I was talking to a really good friend of mine who said to me, live in what you know, not in what you think. Find peace in what you know, not in what you see. And I'll put the quote in the show notes so that you can capture it and correctly quote her. I'm taking that into the new year because I understand the importance of centering myself in my knowing. I'm taking it into the new year because sometimes I can get busy in thinking and even ruminating about things. And if I live in what I'm ruminating over, I have just created a world for myself of possibilities of things that don't really exist. And to choose to be caught in thought when I have the gift of knowing is basically saying I would trust what could be possible over the thing that I know to be true, that I've chosen is aligned, that I believe deeply. Trusting myself means trusting my knowing. There is something really important that I would offer to you, to anyone who is wrestling with knowing, and that is that part of why we struggle with what we know is that we have been taught to have this finite view of right and wrong. And one of the things that is ingrained in us as we come through the educational system is this mindset of what happens when we get something wrong. In the beginning, early on in our lifetime, making a choice is just simply making a choice. But then we put these labels on it, right and wrong, and then it becomes this thing that erodes our value that we see in ourselves when we get something wrong. And I've used this example many times before, but when I think about innovation as a business imperative, part of how you get to innovation is by testing and learning. It's by failing. It's by trying things. It's by getting it wrong so that you can figure out the right way, the other things to do to make it better. There is a tolerance level that's created for the fails that happen. Yet when we are working through our knowing, we become so paralyzed by the thought of what if we get it wrong, that we would rather trust what we are creating in our brains. And the challenge there is that the brain is operating from old data, old experiences, and trying to sense make what is possible in the now, where your knowing is tapping you into some universal truths that you do not fully understand. The second half of that is when you move in your knowing, you have to have grace for the time for whatever it is to be revealed. And that's one of the hardest parts, right? Is that you're trusting and you don't know when you'll actually know if you got it, air quotes, right or not. But here is what I would submit to you. In 2025, it would behoove you to let go or add grace to this finite right and wrong thing. Because as I described earlier, the same way things evolve scientifically, where we consider those to be the truth until something changes. It's like, this is fact until we know something else, and then there's a new fact. But that's life. Trusting means moving forward based on what you know to be true, what you believe is right for you based on the information that you have. And that means there's space for you to learn and grow. There's space certainly for you to question decisions. You'll always have the opportunity to do that. But without this finite way of looking at right and wrong, your knowing is not right or wrong. It just is. It just is. So sit with that as you think about going into 2025. What would happen if you lived in what you know, not what you think? The thoughts tend to lean on protecting us from growth, from change, from transformation, from trying new things, from taking risks. That's the brain's job, is keep us safe. But that safety leads to stagnation for us. We have to be able to try new things and to grow. And it's difficult for you to become the person who the next iteration of self if you are not able to push yourself past the comfort zone that exists today. You can't do that if you don't know yourself in the way that is possible. And finding peace in what you know rather than what you see merely says that what you can see in front of you may be true in this moment, but it doesn't mean it is the greatest and highest outcome for you. It's like going to a basketball game and watching your favorite team down 20 points at the half and leaving knowing that they've lost the game. Making the decision that they have lost the game at halftime. When they emerge from the locker room after the pep talk they have given to one another and the words their coach has spoken, after shifting some of their plays and reminding themselves who they are and what they're made of, they go out there and recover the 20 points and go on to win the game. It's not over until it's over. And sometimes what we see in the moment is trickery. What we see is just enough to get us unsettled to decide that we shouldn't continue to trust ourselves. Finding peace and trusting yourself means I've built a relationship with myself enough to know that no matter what the outcome is, what I'm choosing today is right for me. And if I need to choose something else, I will be able to make that choice. That's what it looks like for you to trust in your knowing. And it will be so important for you to build that muscle in 2025. So I'm carrying that best piece of advice into this next year, living in what I know and finding peace in what I know. Because those pieces are how I continue to strengthen my relationship to self, my relationship to God, It's how I operate on faith. It's how I move forward, propelling myself, catapulting my growth. It's how I will be able to take risks and to set myself up for success in my business and beyond. I thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the podcast. And speaking of Catapult, I am so excited to share with you that Catapult is launching in January of 2025. Catapult is a signature process that I use to help entrepreneurs and business leaders to ground themselves in foundational principles, strengthen their relationship to their business and to what they lead in their organizations, while helping them to navigate some of the dynamics around healing so that they can show up and be their best selves in everything that they do. During the Catapult Head Start program, which is what launches first, we take 4 weeks to work through some of the limiting beliefs that you have around yourself and business, to identify what gaps may exist between you and your business. So if you've ever identified a moment where perhaps you feel frustrated in your business, or you feel like there is a disconnect or something there that's out of alignment, it typically is coming from something on the inside of us that needs to be healed. And so we do some of that work, and I also begin to share some of the principles of having a God-centered business and why that is important for what is to come. And so Catapult Head Start is a 4-week program. It is the entry point into being a part of the Catapult, the broader Catapult program, which is 11 weeks. And you'll have the opportunity to begin to know what it's like to go on this journey and to see your business in a different way. I love that in the short 4-week program, we tackle so many of the bigger issues that there's a lot of introspective work that you have, that you go through, so that you're able to see your business differently and see the impact that you are making in your business. And it creates an opportunity for you to then start to make immediate decisions about how you want to show up differently and what work you need to do in order to create those pivots or changes. There is no better way to catapult your business into next year than to do your healing work. There is a mindset that we have that our work is here and that we are here. And the truth of the matter is, whatever is going on with you is going to show up in your business. And so Catapult helps you to really take a step back and to see where your behaviors, your patterns are impacting your business, impacting your team, impacting even your customers' experience, so that you can create a clear plan and then take measurable steps to create change so that your business can be successful. And all of this is a part of building the right foundation to help your business continue to grow. That said, I'm excited to share the program with you. If you'd like to learn more, there's a link in the show notes. And we are excited about launching our Catapult Head Start program on the 14th of January. And you can learn more about the next step in Catapult, our Catapult Medium. You'll learn more about that at our website at anikaapple.com. Peace and blessings.